Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today I will analyze the new information revealed about the Bryan Kohberger case on Dateline and offer my thoughts about why Bryan watched one of my videos about the quadruple murder in Moscow, Idaho. First, I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the crime, then offer my analysis. Bryan Christopher Kohberger was born on November 21, 1994, in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. He graduated from high school in 2013. When Bryan was a teenager, he wrote online about experiencing a few mental health symptoms, including a lack of emotion, dissociation, and minimal remorse. He told a friend about how he struggled with depression and mentioned prior heroin use. At one time, Bryan was very heavy, but he lost over 100 pounds. His goal in life was to work with high-profile criminal offenders. In 2018, Bryan earned an associate's degree in psychology from a community college. He worked as a security guard for the Pleasant Valley School District. In 2020, he earned a bachelor's degree in psychology. In 2022, Bryan graduated with a master's degree in criminal justice. In June of that year, he moved to Pullman, Washington, and attended Washington State University, pursuing a PhD in criminology. He was given a job as a teaching assistant, but lost that job on December 19, 2022, due to his behavior and poor performance. Evidently, Bryan was a little too demanding. Now moving to the timeline of the crime. On November 13, 2022, at 11:56 a.m., a woman named Bethany Funk, who lived in a house on 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho, called 911. She said, "Something happened at our house, and we don't know what." While trying to supply the address, she appeared to be very upset. Another woman took the phone and said, quote, "One of the roommates who's passed out, and she was drunk last night, and she's not waking up," unquote. Here is what the police found during the course of their investigation. The house on King Road had 3 floors, with 2 bedrooms on each floor. It was built on a hill, so the second floor was level with the ground on one side. On the second floor, the bedrooms were separated by a living room and a kitchen area. The police found 4 college students dead in the house: 21-year-old Madison Mogan, 20-year-old Xana Kernodle, 21-year-old Kaylee Gonsalves, and 20-year-old Ethan Chapin. Madison and Xana lived in the house along with 2 roommates who were unharmed, Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk. Again, Bethany is the person who called 911. Kaylee had recently moved out but was visiting the house. Ethan was Xana's boyfriend. He often slept over. Madison and Kaylee were found in Madison's bedroom on the 3rd floor. Next to Madison's body, the police found a leather knife sheath. Xana and Ethan were found in Xana's bedroom on the 2nd floor. All 4 victims had been stabbed to death. The police believed that the killer entered on the 2nd floor through the sliding glass door, which was left unlocked. He went upstairs to Madison's bedroom, where he killed Madison and Kaylee. Xana heard the attack and investigated. In response to being confronted by Xana, the killer dropped the knife sheath and chased her back to her bedroom. There he murdered both Xana and Ethan. On the evening of November 12, the 4 residents of the house, plus Kaylee and Ethan, arrived at the house no later than 2 p.m. By 4 a.m., they were in their bedrooms. Some of them were asleep. At 4:17 a.m., a surveillance camera captured distorted voices, followed by a loud thud. At around the same time, Dylan Mortensen heard noises and looked out of her bedroom door 2 times without seeing anything. When she looked for a 3rd time, she saw a man she did not recognize. He was wearing black clothing and a mask and had bushy eyebrows. The man exited the house through the sliding glass door without making any effort to attack Dylan. In an apparent state of panic, she locked her bedroom door. No one called the police for over 7 hours. Presumably, the man that Dylan saw was the killer. The police found surveillance video which covered part of King Road, and they identified a white Hyundai Elantra spotted near the King Road house. The car was there at 3:30 a.m., 3:33, 3:38, 3:40, 3:56, and 3:58 a.m. At 4:06 a.m., the vehicle turned around at the intersection of Queen Road and King Road and drove toward the house. Presumably, the vehicle stopped in front of the house. The vehicle drove away quickly at 4:20 a.m. The police found a vehicle matching the description of this vehicle registered to Bryan Kohberger. He was not arrested at this time. Rather, he was kept under surveillance. Bryan left his apartment in Pullman, Washington, to drive back to his family home with his father. Bryan was pulled over in Indiana on December 15, 2022. He arrived at his parents' house in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, on December 16. 14 days later, on December 30, Bryan Kohberger was arrested. He was charged with 4 counts of murder and 1 count of burglary. In September 2024, a judge granted a defense motion for a change of venue. Bryan's trial will be held in Boise, Idaho, and is scheduled to start on August 11, 2025. If he is convicted, Bryan Kohberger could face the death penalty, which may be carried out by a firing squad based on a 2023 change in Idaho's execution protocol. Now moving to my analysis. Here are my thoughts on a few areas that stood out to me in this case. Item number 1. Bryan Kohberger maintains his innocence and, amazingly, he has a large number of supporters. They argue there is insufficient evidence that he was responsible for the murders. The state, of course, disagrees. They believe it is obvious that Bryan is the killer. With this in mind, was Bryan Kohberger guilty of murder? In my analysis, I will include the new incriminating evidence revealed in a Dateline episode on this case. Let's look at the evidence both for and against the idea that he was guilty, starting with the inculpatory factors. About 8 months before the murders, Bryan purchased a 7-inch K-bar knife with a sheath on Amazon. The sheath matched the one found in Madison's bedroom. Bryan's DNA was on that sheath. After the murders, he searched on Amazon for a K-bar knife sheath as if he was looking for a replacement. Not long after moving to Washington, Bryan searched for images of female students at Washington State University and the University of Idaho. Many of the students were wearing bathing suits. Some of the students were friends with the 3 women who were murdered at the King Road house. In August 2022, Bryan Kohberger searched online for information about Ted Bundy and downloaded a research article about how serial killers justify their behavior. On September 30, Bryan searched the internet for sociopathic traits in college student. On October 9, he searched for adults-only videos with the keywords forced, passed out, drugged, and sleeping. On October 19, he searched for can psychopaths behave prosocially. In July and August 2022, Bryan's phone had been in the area of the King Road house on several occasions. On November 13, at 2:47 a.m., about an hour and a half before the murders, Bryan's phone left his apartment in Pullman. It was deactivated at 2:54 a.m. At 4:48 a.m., Bryan's phone was reactivated, so his phone was off during the time of the murders. A vehicle matching the description of Bryan's Hyundai Elantra was captured driving by the house on King Road several times. It returned right before the murders and left right after the murders. Bryan thoroughly washed his vehicle after the murders and changed the registration. Bryan matched the description of the presumed killer, which was provided by Dylan Mortensen. His phone was in the area of the King Road house in the hours after the murders. In the weeks after the crime, Bryan searched the internet for University of Idaho murders. He watched several videos about the case, including one on November 28, which I published on November 21, titled, "Does the College Student Killer in Idaho Share Traits with Ted Bundy?" When Bryan was arrested at his parents' house in Pennsylvania, he was taking out trash at about 4 a.m. while wearing surgical gloves. Moving to the exculpatory factors, Dylan Mortensen was intoxicated when she saw the presumed killer. Her description may not be accurate. Bryan Kohberger did not have any obvious connection to any of the victims. That's pretty much it for the exculpatory factors. When considering all the evidence in this case, do I believe that Bryan Kohberger is guilty? Yes, I am convinced of his guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Item number 2, what mental health factors may have been at work in this case? Bryan's defense has indicated that he has autism spectrum disorder and obsessive-compulsive disorder. He is socially awkward, displays extremely rigid thinking, processes information on a piecemeal basis, has difficulty planning ahead, perseverates on specific topics, and has a lack of insight. Given Bryan's search history, it seems likely that he believed he had characteristics of psychopathy. This brings me to item number 3. What do I think happened in this case? This is just a theory, my opinion. Bryan Kohberger was self-centered, impulsive, sensation-seeking, cold, callous, obsessive, manipulative, deceptive, fearless, grandiose, antagonistic, remorseless, socially awkward, had a sense of entitlement, and was exceedingly creepy. He was probably correct about having characteristics of psychopathy. Bryan was motivated by a desire to dominate women sexually. He knew that these desires were antisocial and wanted to know if he would ever be normal. He was interested to know if he could ever change. This is why he searched for, can psychopaths behave prosocially? Bryan was looking for hope, but he did not find any. Ultimately, he accepted the destiny he believed was unavoidable and gave in to his dark desires. The house on King Road was selected as the location for the crime because Bryan wanted to kill Madison. It's not clear how he knew about Madison, but he must have learned about her in some way. Maybe he simply saw her one day outside her house. When Bryan went to Madison's bedroom, he was surprised to see Kaylee in the same bed as her. He was again surprised when Xana investigated the noise that he was making. Bryan ended up killing 4 people, but probably only intended on killing 1. He left the house without killing Dylan because he assumed she already called 911, and he was exhausted. The knife sheath was left behind during the confusion, which sealed Bryan's fate. Now moving to item number 4. As I mentioned, over a month before he was arrested, Bryan watched one of my YouTube videos about the murders. In the video, I talked about the likely characteristics of the perpetrator based on the nature of the crime. For example, I indicated that the offender was probably a male between 20 and 40 years old. Bryan was 8 days shy of his 28th birthday when he allegedly committed the murders. The killer was looking for a specific victim. We now know Madison was the intended victim. The killer's motive was sexual. Bryan made multiple searches for female college students in bathing suits and for adults-only videos. The offender was socially awkward and a creepy loner. Bryan matches both of those descriptions. The killer had a criminal record. Bryan did not have a criminal record, but he did admit to using heroin, which of course is a crime. And the offender was excited in the hours after the murder. I don't know if Bryan was excited or not, but he allegedly returned to the scene of the murders not long after 9 a.m. and took a selfie at 10:31 a.m. I don't know why Bryan watched my video. He may have been eager to learn what a PhD counselor educator had to say about the crime. Maybe this could give him some advantage in his effort to escape responsibility. For example, Bryan learned that he had many of the characteristics that law enforcement would have been looking for. Perhaps he used the information to adjust his behavior to appear less like the offender's personality profile. For instance, Bryan may have been trying to appear less creepy. The video that Bryan watched also contained my thoughts on how the Idaho quadruple murder case was similar to the notorious Chi Omega murders perpetrated by Ted Bundy in 1978. Ted entered a sorority house in Tallahassee, Florida, and attacked multiple women with a piece of firewood. It is believed Ted assumed he would get arrested because his crime was so brazen. I imagine that when Bryan watched this segment of the video, it was not encouraging for him. Maybe he realized that his arrest was also likely. On the other hand, it's possible that Bryan found this comparison exciting or even inspiring because he allegedly committed a crime which was comparable to one of the most notorious attacks in the history of true crime. Bryan had allegedly cemented his place as a villain. Now moving to my final thoughts. One question that I've received after the Dateline episode aired is how does it feel to know that Bryan watched one of my videos? Here are my thoughts on this. Over the last 11 years, I have made thousands of videos. I produce videos about a lot of different topics like troubled social media influencers, politics, pop culture, misbehaving actors, transportation disasters, cult activity, missing people, and of course, true crime. I've received messages from many people involved directly or indirectly with cases I've covered: perpetrators, victims, investigators, lawyers, and of course, family members, friends, or acquaintances of any of those groups. For example, the mother of a perpetrator or the neighbor of a victim. For the most part, people thank me in these messages. They found my video to be interesting, accurate, or helpful. On a few occasions, however, people aren't too thrilled with my analysis, especially the perpetrators. If they were the target of dark humor contained in the video, it only increases the likelihood of a negative response on their part. Offenders don't always find the dark humor as funny as members of the public. When considering Bryan Kohberger's situation, it makes sense that he would watch a video about a crime he allegedly committed. In addition, Bryan was a PhD student. People in this category tend to be intellectually curious. Many people who enjoy my channel have a very high level of intellectual curiosity. This is something that I've witnessed repeatedly over the years. The fact that Bryan watched my video isn't really surprising. Even so, it is a little weird to imagine a man who allegedly just killed 4 people was trying to learn from an analysis I conducted. He was trying to figure out how to use the information to escape or to gain gratification. Either purpose is disconcerting and unnerving. Whenever a content creator produces educational material, there is always a chance it will be consumed by someone whose purpose for watching deviates from the expected. This is just part of the business of making videos. Fortunately, Bryan Kohberger was arrested, so all his further enjoyment of my videos will occur behind bars, where his potential for destruction is limited. Those are my thoughts on the case of Bryan Kohberger. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you soon. Just a reminder that I have a Patreon account which contains over 300 pre-release videos. These videos are of the same quality as the videos that I release to the public. When I put a video in pre-release status, it often stays there for months, if not a year. I will put the link to Patreon in the description for this video.